the US, as I said, is either with us or, And so, when Pol Pot went to China, asked Beijing to help him, Beijing said, no, we are with Sihanouk, and Sihanouk is neutral, we accept his neutrality. But when Sihanouk went there and embraced the Khmerus and said, the Americans are invading Cambodia with this runoff, let's all go and kill Ronald. China gives them anything they want, weapons, troops, and so that's when the Khmerus was able to take the whole Cambodia. And Sihanouk was their leader, in the beginning. And then they put him under house arrest. But Beijing told Pol Pot, don't ever kill that Sihanouk. He's like our man. So, but all the time, now, it's very interesting your question because this continued, because so many of his children were killed by Khmerus. But going back to when these two prime ministers, the royal government, Sihanouk was not happy. This is when I presented my credentials as ambassador to Sihanouk. He says, oh, those two, these two children, they put me somewhere in the sky, a king that rules but doesn't reign. And so he's not happy. And again, he uses the Khmerus to stir up the trouble. So you are right, using it because he wants to maintain power. So it's a power now. So even in 1993, when I presented my presidency, 1994, he told me, at that time the Khmerus actually attacked. That was when I arrived in Cambodia as an ambassador. They attacked, Battambang and came in the doorstep of Battambang. And the king, Sihanouk, was, this is recorded, but anyway, this is the truth what he did. Excellency, he told me, he served 34 and champagne at 10 in the morning, but Excellency, there will be two Cambodias, an outer circle, Khmerus, and an inner circle. So he almost, there was joy almost, because he thinks these two should be taught a lesson. So he uses the Khmerus for his own glory. And so at that time, I still remember him saying this, Excellency, gesticulating to the map. There's an outer circle, of Sisompan, Battambang, Siem Reap, and then there is the rest. So that's a very complex relationship between Sihanouk and the Khmerus. As I said, many books have been written, but still, it's difficult to know. Maybe it's a combination of both. That he uses the Khmerus for his own glory, but also, like I said, he asked me to be his wine taster to go to their territories because in Penh, they love him. They treated him like the king. The Khmerus treated him with waving their SNC flags. Some dance, and he loves pomp and circumstance. He loves it. And that's why Hun Sen uses it. When he arrived in Phnom Penh, I showed you the slide. When he arrived in Phnom Penh as the head of SNC, Hun Sen gave him the welcome as the head of state. And 2 days later, Hun Sen said, he is our head of state. We don't need this Untag business. And of course, New York, meaning China, plus also the US, didn't like this. Paris is Paris. We have to carry the whole ritual, so not suddenly bypass the Khmerus. Yes.
This is a general topic. I know some of us are considering joining the Foreign Service later as a career, and I was wondering if
you are going to the Foreign Service?
I'm not sure I'd like to at some point, and I was wondering if you think there are any pros to being, joining the UN as a diplomat instead of joining the Foreign Service.
Well, Foreign Service is good, yeah, but You can join the UN directly, you know. I joined the UN. Foreign service, the problem is, of course, you don't know if you ask. My daughter joined the foreign service, but you know, took the exam. But they will tell you where to. Maybe they send you to Rwanda, you know, or wherever. But UN also, of course, there is a national exam in the UN for young people to join. I can give you more information. My name is Widyono at AOL.com or Widyono at Facebook. 2 words.
Can I give them those
Yes,
addresses?
sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so any question you want to ask, I'm not sure. No, of course, the UN has a quota for every country, you see, for membership. But the US quota is still open because not many Americans want to join. Some quotas, like Philippines and so on, are completely closed. So you can join through the national exam also. And there is a website for national competitive exam. Yes.
You talked a lot about some of the major failures of the attack and some of the successes. How do I say this? If you could have prescribed the role of the attack, going back to prescribe the role of the attack, what would you have done differently?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with you. It's easy to explain in a way this is this. But okay, the failures are actually stems from the fact that actually there is no agreement between the two sides. So they had to force an agreement. For instance, this thing about Hun Sen doesn't exist. Actually, Hun Sen never wanted to accept it. Until today, Hun Sen is very much against the Paris Agreement, you know. And there was the celebration of the Paris Agreement of 20 years and so on, and he nixed it because he actually never accepted it. So what I'm saying is, but at the end, Hun Sen has to agree because actually what happened, why we were successful to have the Paris Agreement is that the Russia collapsed, the Union of Soviet USSR collapsed. So his client, you know, the Russians collapsed. So Hun Sen had to agree, but inside he didn't agree. Now, so this thing about we control Hun Sen's party, you know, this is just a face saving. As I said, it would take us hundreds of thousands of people, not 10 people, to control. So of course that's neither here nor there, you know, because the conflict has been going on for too long, and the big powers also want to get rid of this Cambodian power. They want to say, let's move on, you know, because they don't know how to solve it. So these compromises will be that the Khmerus continue in there and so on. So how I would differently? I don't think I can, because if you wait until everyone agrees, maybe with 20 more years, you see. So at that time, the Western powers are happy to get rid. Let's leave when we are still ahead, sort of. And then they went. Akashi, the head, actually went to Yugoslavia. He was a success in Cambodia, you know, by doing nothing. Now he went to Sarajevo, and he was a failure for doing nothing. That was the story of Akashi. Yes, there's Lord.
Benny, I'm going to venture out on a long limb. Recently, we've been exposed in the news, very recently, to the extent of the possibility of human barbarism. And
Human what?
barbarism.
Barbarism.
More than incivility, barbaric behavior.
Yeah.
And to our reaction to that, which has been around the world, thanks to the media. I'm wondering when did the extent of the Khmer Rouge genocide become, when did the Khmer people become aware of the extent of the genocide? When did the world capitals become aware of it? And with that as a background, how can you speak of something like reconciliation with the people who perpetrated those acts?
Okay, your first question, actually the Cambodians, inside Cambodia were very much aware. You see, because this New York recognition of the Khmer Rouge only happened in New York, so the Khmer people were very much aware. And as I said, there were some reprisal attacks actually against the Khmer. The world capitals, it's because of this New York thing, you know. No, there is a difference in Eastern Europe. They do recognize the Khmer Rouge as, you know, because the Eastern Europe was actually recognizing Hun Sen and not the Khmer Rouge. So that's my simple question. Now about what was your final?
No, but actually, the Eastern Europe would have recognized it because at the time it would have been completely under Russian domination.
Yes.
And the Russians were partial.
Yes. But my opinion is.
So the question then is how, when the UN, or not the UN, but when the major powers were negotiating the Paris agreements, how could there be any consideration of including the Khmer Rouge as a party to what would become a form of legitimacy?
Well, as I said, the U.S. and China insisted, you know, to include the Khmer Rouge. This Hun Sen, Sihanouk, hurrah, hurrah. Actually, France was tacitly in agreement with it. But U.S. and China insisted to have the Khmer Rouge included. China, of course, very clearly why, but the U.S. says that this Paris agreement has to continue. You know.
Can I ask a two-finger question to Lois's, which is,
Yeah.
at that time, what was the perception of Hun Sen? That he was that it was closer to the Vietnam, so closer to Hanoi than he actually turned out to be? Because right now, there seems to be some sort of a distance, but going back to 1990, 1991, what was the perception among, not necessarily both Beijing, but in Washington, and might that have been one of the reasons why they were insisting on including the Khmer Rouge?
You mean they were afraid of Hun Sen would be close to Vietnam? That's a very good point. Yeah. I never thought of that actually. There may be I think that could be the main reason where China, because as we said, you know, Deng Xiaoping has open economy and so on, so he is not really ideologically supporting Khmer Rouge at all. So it could be that if you have Hun Sen with Sihanouk, basically, yeah, the whole thing will be Vietnam oriented. Very good, of course, point, you know. But I'm myself not 100%, you know. Yes.
I'm going to pick up something else that you told me on another occasion, which absolutely shocked me. Is it not also true that the United States was surreptitiously arming the Khmer Rouge during the whole period following Hun Sen's, depending on how you see it, liberation or invasion of Cambodia?
Okay, the warrior refugees concept. China definitely armed the Khmer Rouge, as I said, through the Deng Xiaoping trail, and you know that is from Satahim, the border in Thailand, and to the Cambodian border. No, the U.S. armed the other factions supposedly, and ASEAN also armed the other factions. But of course, a lot of weapons went to the Khmer Rouge, and you know, Stephen Solars was complaining about this. But they didn't officially give the Khmer Rouge. China gave them ample, you know. But the U.S. gave to the other factions. But very often the other factions are so weak that the weapons ended up in the Khmer Rouge. That's why I call them warrior refugees. You know, they were refugees, but they were put there as a war and actually to defeat Hun Sen. So actually, from the standpoint of the U.S., they tried to, for Hun Sen to create to cry uncle since 1979, and he still hasn't cried uncle.
No, you made January 7th National Day.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is, actually, yeah, we were on a holiday, when CKS met, No, we didn't this year, but one year I think we met on that day, and they were frowning upon that. This year I was on a plane, I think, 7th January. Yes.
I think we have until 4, is there enough time to, so please do feel free to.
So in your book you talk about more about after the Vietnam ended their occupation in 1989, I believe, and you talk and all that. But what could you speak a bit about the role of Vietnam from 1979?
Okay.
Whether you think they liberated or occupied, and what consequences do you think that had for?
Okay. Yeah. Well, if I can call it liberated, but it's certainly not because of their altruistic purposes. Because the Khmer started attacking Vietnamese villages. So basically it's self-defense. And the plan of Vietnam was not to conquer the whole Cambodia, but to stop, somewhere in the middle where the Mekong is. But they found it was so surprisingly easy everywhere the Khmer colonized. So they just, before they know it, they were at it all the way in the whole country. So now the role of Vietnam during the 79 afterwards is, one, they were actually more than advisors. They basically control all the ministries, including Hun Sen. There's one man, Mo Diem, I think, who controls Hun Sen himself all the time. So after all, you see Hun Sen's people are not adept in governance. They were also guerrillas. So the whole system was based on Vietnam's model. So Vietnam, and they actually we look at this only on Vietnamese invasion, but I met Vietnamese scholars who said that we suffered a lot. You see, just like America suffered a lot in Iraq. They are not a rich country. So many Vietnamese soldiers died here, and it cost a lot of money. But as I said, it's not altruistic. They wanted to be, because the Khmer started attacking and killing Vietnamese. Because Pol Pot at one time said, we are 1 to 7, if one of us kills 7 Vietnamese, we can destroy the whole Vietnam. Because Vietnam has 7 times our population. Yes.
When you're finishing your presentation,
Pardon?
When you're finishing your presentation,
Yeah.
I was wondering what do you think is Cambodia's greatest issue right now?
Cambodia's what?
Greatest issue right now?
Oh. I would say corruption. The corruption is really crying to high heaven. You all went to Angkor, I presume. You pay $20, I think, whatever, at the door, and it was very efficient. It was easily done, and the agency that is doing this is called Sokimek, Soka. They are all the names of a Sihanouk crony. He got that concession for $1 million a year. So he gets $1 million and he takes all the receipts. Now they estimate that I think he gets 120 million a year. So 119 million disappeared, not in his own pocket, but you know who. Yeah, I hope this, well, I don't care. Yeah.
So,
corruption, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So I have a question about kind of China and Cambodia's contemporary relationship. You
Yeah.
ended with the slide about Cambodia's place in kind of a new Cold War. And there's been a lot of talk recently about China potentially kind of leveraging its aid to use Cambodia as a Trojan horse in ASEAN. especially related to kind of contemporary disputes over land in South China Sea and other places. So what is your opinion of China maybe potentially attempting to manipulate Cambodia today and into the future?
Well, it's not just Cambodia. You see, China wants to dominate the whole world and especially this area. So Cambodia is a small country actually in that connection. Of course, this course is about Cambodia. But Cambodia, he finds a very wily partner. 2 years ago, Hun Sen came to Cambodia. You know, we have every year ASEAN Summit meeting. Have you heard of that? Yeah, this ASEAN Summit meeting this year was held in Myanmar. And the year before was Brunei. But 2 years ago, well, the year before was Cambodia. And Obama was very angry when he came to Cambodia. He said, oh, you know, Hun Sen, you know, I'm not here for you, etc. But actually he's angry also because Hun Sen took the side of China on the South China Sea issue. China, of course, that's a big dispute. Nobody agrees on that, but every year it is on the agenda of the ASEAN meeting. Until in Cambodia, Hun Sen was stopped by China into abandoning them. So there was no, Obama and Philippines were very angry. So as I said, you see, it's not just Cambodia. They want to dominate the whole place. So all the investment is not, in Cambodia. They invest everywhere because they now establish, as you know, AFIP, Asia Infrastructure. Have you ever heard of that? Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. And that is established by China with $100 billion capital to give loans to infrastructure in Asia. So they want to dominate it through the new NDB, the bank of a BRICS bank, they call it, And so they have the money. You know that China just overtook the US as the biggest GDP in the world. You have seen that at the end of 2014, now they have the biggest GDP by PPP, with PPP purchasing power parity. And foreign exchange reserve, China has 3.3 billion, you can buy the whole world, you see. So it's not just Cambodia, but Cambodia is a wily partner in this concern. Now, Thein Sein, of Myanmar, Myanmar, as you know, for 30 years has been ruled, but Thein Sein is able to give the finger to China and it goes to them. But ultimately, on the infrastructure, on railroads, you see, Asian Development Bank was going to build a railroad from Cambodia, from Sihanoukville to Phnom Penh and to the border of Thailand, to link. But some watching by the ADB people, I happen to know, they only are able to finance Sihanoukville to Phnom Penh. So China said, okay, I'll take the rest, I'll build the rest. So it's sheer money, but it's not just Cambodia. They want to influence the whole world, especially this region.
Yeah. Benny, I just want to say that we all kind of snuck into, I don't think there's any better word for it, we snuck into a Chinese
Irrigation project.
Oh, really?
Yeah. we just walked in, and luckily we have about a half dozen Chinese speakers among us. So we pretty much, in an impromptu fashion, interviewed the people.
Really?
So
where was this?
In
Kampong Chhnang? Kampong Chhnang, yeah, that's where they're from. Oh, how many speak Chinese here? Oh my God! Why so many? My book is translated into Chinese. You want to buy my book? $5. Yes.
I have a bit of a hypothetical question. So that Hun Sen's been in power for roughly 30 years, and he's so ingrained in Cambodian society with all the different CDP outlooks throughout the country. As we talked a couple weeks ago, when the CDP nearly lost the elections, if the CPP were to lose the next parliamentary elections, what do you think the reaction would be by Hun Sen, the CPP, and other institutions in Cambodia?
Very good point. Well, I know people in the inner circle here, and last January, when this massive demonstrations of what's his fellow, around Sam and CPP, the CPP inner Politburo was worried. I know from inner circle, they were worried. But then, Hun Sen uses his while he's staying powers, wearing them out, just like lawyers do that, stay in power at the end, he will win. So now they are less worried, but now they are co-opting other parties. This fellow Hun Sen, this runner, this idiot, he is brought back by Hun Sen to be chairman of Hun Sen Pact again. If you read my book, you know what he did to Hun Sen Pact was he sliced them into pieces, like a salami, or pepperoni if you prefer. And now he is trying to do the same. And the second point is that his trouble, Hun Sen's trouble, may be from internally in the CPP. If that happens, then I think we will see the end. Because the problem with Sam Rainsy is, I know him very well. He was the Minister of Finance during my first year. He was kicked out by Hun Sen Pact, not by himself. He is a loner, and he is an agitator. He loves to agitate. But so my point is, I think what Hun Sen will do is to co-opt people who are not CPP in powerful positions. There's one man already, Sun Chantol, who has become Minister of Commerce, very powerful. That used to be Chan Prasit, is Hun Sen's interpreter, but he was replaced with Sun Chantol, So he wants to, between now and the election, he wants to show, I'm not just for CPP. There's another Kong Kim Hwan, who's the president of the University of Cambodia. He just became minister without portfolio. And as I said, he even brought back this Ranarit fellow, to become head of Hun Sen Pact. Because Ranarit is easy to manipulate. I don't know whether he will succeed or not, but this is his strategy now. But in January, when all this demonstration happened, he was scared to death, I think. Not only the Politburo. I heard some internal news from them. But then later on it turned out that it fizzles out. And as long as I said he controls the army, if there is a revolt in the army, then it's the same like Indonesia, Sukarno was in there and Suharto, but as soon as there is a revolt within the army, then they collapse. Yes. Oh, sorry, Jay.
I had a question about the military. We've had
About
about the military.
Yes.
We've had previous discussions about the close relationship between the CCP and the military infrastructure. We were specifically talking about what the risk is that Cambodia goes the way of Thailand, where in the case that Hun Sen is starting to lose control, that the military could stage somewhat of a coup de force and take over.
Yeah, well, first of all, Hun Sen is military, but every time this might happen, he replaced the General Chief of Staff with K. Kim Yang, and when he thinks he might harbor that kind of thing, he replaced him with Paul Saron, who is very close to him. But I don't know how often he can do it. And Tia Ban is very close to him. Tia Ban is a Thai, ethnic Thai, who is the Minister of Defense. But we never know. We see how much discontent. The thing is that in prosperity, you look at my economic rate of growth, a lot of people got very rich. You don't have to, you look at around you, how many people own all this. So when the economy is good, it's much more difficult to deposit. When the economy starts going bad, then, but we don't know who is in there. As I said, Ko Kim Yan has just been neutralized, but Paul Saron these names are familiar to you, right?
Not all of them.
Oh, yeah, well, Paul Sarwan is very close to Hun Sen. I don't think he will be back for the, if one figure there, the Hun Sen actually his private guard, bodyguard, these are the most loyal to them. They are loyal to their death, and they are their own battalion, and his own son was his head. And shameless to say, they are ordering in Indonesia, because Indonesia has a very big special forces that are very.
I was just wondering, you just speak about your book was how you had interactions, personal interactions with these major figures in Cambodian politics, with Hun Sen, Anrit, and Siem.
Yeah.
Could you speak about what they are, what they're like personally? What were they like as people, meeting them, talking to them?
Okay.
Characteristics.
Yeah. Well, Sihanouk is quite a character, I don't know how to describe him. He is flamboyant, and he has a great sense of humor. And when I sat with him with my petit four and my champagne, he says, "Excellency, these curtains, big curtains, behind that they have the spies, This spy goes to Hun Sen, this spy is extremely witty and charming and ruthless also, and also intelligent. Ranariddh was Ranariddh. He talks like his father, exactly. But what he says in his is bullshit. Hun Sen has no sense of humor, but also very, very clever man. He sits there and he can talk for hours if he wants. So he is also intelligent, But so among the three of them, I think Ranariddh is the loser. Hun Sen and Sihanouk were both very clever. Yes.
Hey, I just wanted to ask a two-finger to one of these questions. He asked me a question that I couldn't answer yesterday. So I want to ask you that question because it speaks to this. So you said that you know Sam fairly well.
Yeah.
To what degree, as far as you know, is his anti-Vietnam rhetoric something that's political or something that he actually believes in? So how much of this is strategic and how much is it something that he really feels?
I think maybe it's political because Hun Sen, he thinks Vietnam. If you want to attack Hun Sen, you have to attack Vietnam. But it baffles me personally because he is a racist, when it comes to, officially he is a racist. When he talks about Vietnam, it's just you, but I think that is used to attack Hun Sen indirectly. Because, you don't like somebody to attack his friends. But in his deep heart, I don't know. Well, most Cambodians are, anti-Vietnam. Because this is for centuries, just like Indonesia, there are a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment. It's difficult to know, where it comes from, but it's there. Yes.
So, in your presentation, you talked about how the elections the UN sponsored initially after kind of the resolution of the PRK, how those were successful. But we've been talking about kind of how Hun Sen established himself as, a strong man at best and a dictator at worst. So, were these democratic elections really successful if they didn't lead to kind of a perpetuation of democracy?
Okay, yeah. Very good. Very good question. This is a very good class. I'm learning a lot. Yes, let me think. I have to think first. Yes. I said successful in bringing finally peace and prosperity to Cambodia. So successful from the standpoint of international actors who have been at war, and in the meantime, Cambodia continued to suffer after 79. They were liberated from the Khmerus, and they continued to suffer 12 years. so it is successful in the standpoint of, from the standpoint of internet and of bringing finally some progress. You know, if you look, when I was in Siem Reap, there was one hotel, and look at now, and a lot of people are happy in Siem Reap. I don't know whether you notice, I'm sure. They are all smiling, you know. And even the tuk-tuk driver smiling. If they see you, they change the price 4 times. But you put 6 in a tuk-tuk, so it comes 50 cents each. Okay, so that's what I meant by success. Because the elections is a Western concept, you know. They say, you know, with the election, everything will be hunky-dory. Of course, that's not true. But it is useful because the foreign aid came back because of that. Now, the fact that Hun Sen manipulates the outcome of the election to his advantage, that shows actually that election alone is not, not the answer. Well, we have seen that elsewhere. You know. Look at Iraq. You know, look at it. So in other words, the Western concept of elections will solve everything is not true. But what would have been better? I think, you know, they have suffered enough in numbers. You know, that lady who was married, lady has $6 a month, you know, how many women? $6 a month. And now, she is owning a donut shop in California. Well, how many of you are from California? All the donut shops are owned by Cambodians there, I think. But, so yeah, it's a very good question. But you know, now there is another point also that is after the election, you see, because of what I said, unholy triangle, the whole government is owned by Hun Sen in a way, you know, the facto. So after the election, because Hun Sen won.